No. Welcome to autumn, to the glorious land of fall. We're just gonna pretend that whatever's going on out there isn't going on. Because in here, we're going on a BER hunt. No, not a bear hunt. That sounds entirely too vigorous. No, instead, we are going on a BER hunt. As in September, October, November, and I suppose December. And what shall we be hunting for in our BER hunt? Oh my god, stop it. We are hunting for 5-star books. And this month, my friends, I have sharpened my arrows. I think I have truly compiled the best list to ever list. So here we are. I present to you a list of things that don't dare disappoint me. Because in the second half of this year, Mama needs some bookish sustenance. And welcome back to another video. Today I will be delivering to you a mildly tardy TBR. Mildly tardy because the first couple of days of this month did not go entirely to plan. I have seen the inside of hospitals far too many times already this month, and it's only the 4th as I film this. So not only are we on a BER hunt, but we are also on a tiny reset. Just gonna pretend that the first couple of days of the month didn't exist. Although I have still been reading during those days, so maybe they weren't entirely a bust. Really just my health that's busted. Yes, it is reset and also recap time. Because of course it is also a bingo board time. Look, she matches the colours of the season. And yeah, that genuinely might be the best thing about her. Although that is a little bit of a fibby fib on my end. Because despite the fact that this has been painful, despite the fact that I have been on the bus of the struggles, I can announce that I am planning to do a new bingo board for 2024. And you guys have asked a couple of times if you could have a copy of this board, so next year a copy of the board you shall have. Both a blank one and one with my new prompts on it. And I promise by then I'll have a decent name and a hashtag for it other than bingo board hell. Right, so let's get on with it. And let's bring you down a little. I really am needing the comfy support of this seat at the moment. No cats on this chair today. Alright, so first up, let's just launch in there. Let's just go in like we mean business. And let's talk about the read 75% of my 2023 purchases square. If you missed last month and you're just tuning back in, welcome. You will notice that this square has changed. Originally, this square was read 80% of your 2023 purchases, but we agreed on a new rule, which is that if I complete any of the other squares on the board twice, I get to take 5% off of this total. And as I have completed the Read 5 non-fiction books twice in 2023, I have indeed lowered the total. And as you can also see, as of August, we had read 40% of my 2023 purchases. But I am delighted to say that as of the start of this month, we have read 59% of my 2023 purchases. And that is taking into account the book haul that you're going to see this month and the couple of books which have appeared behind me a little bit too late for that book haul. And I'm actually excited by this number, guys. I think it's actually fair to say at this point that we are in fact off to the races. You may have seen at my unhaul video recently where I was a little bit pessimistic about this square. I was like, there's a good chance that I'm not actually going to hit this goal. I hadn't actually yet done the calculations for August, and I was pretty sure in that video that there was no chance that we were going to hit this total. But now I've gone from extremely pessimistic to cautiously a little bit optimistic. And I should probably be saying it really quietly just in case it hears me. But like... And so in an effort to push us even closer to this goal, I have heavily weighted this month's TBR with 2023 purchases. I figure that by the end of September, we will know pretty definitively whether it's actually a possibility, whether it's like a losing battle that was fought valiantly but in vain, or whether she came from behind and took it at the last minute. And interestingly, also this month, most of the 2023 purchases that I also have on audiobook, which was somewhat strategic of me because I am actually going to be out of commission for 2 weeks in the middle of September. For finally, I shall be reunited with my lovely friend and co-host of the Around the Disc in 800 Days readathon, Kirsty. She is flying all this way from Australasia for the first time since the pepperoni, and we are going on a truly very Bog Witch inspired adventure. So there's going to be a lot of driving time, and then there's going to be a lot of like really tired and not wanting to talk to each other ever again in the evening time, wherein I will consume these books via my ears while looking at beautiful views and attempting not to ADHD all over Kirsty because she will kill me. The first 3 books on this TBR are actually carryovers from last month's TBR, and that is because 2 of them I was in the middle of at the end of August, and so I have carried them on into September, because although August was one of my best reading months of the year, like your girl read a lot, I still couldn't quite fit this last one in. And that book is Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. I have a proof of this one. It comes out in October and I am so very excited for it. Alex E. Harrow is of course the author of the Once and Future Witches, which is one of my favourite books of all time. And when I heard that she was going to be bringing out a haunted house book, I kind of lost my cool a little bit. I did a not so quiet fangirl gasp in the middle of my living room, but I will admit I did keep Starling House to the very end of my August TBR because I knew that if I was going to carry on a book into the BER months, that it should probably be this one. Now, very frustratingly, I know this is the only book on this TBR that I am not going to be giving you any kind of in-depth description of, and that is because I am trying my level best to hear absolutely nothing about this one before I pick it up. I want to go into this one with as little information as possible and be as surprised and delighted by it as I know Alex Harrow could make me. As always, I link all of the books that I talk about down below in my description, so if you do want to find out anything more about it, then head down there. Now, next up, one of the other books that I am carrying over is Penance by Eliza Clark. I'm halfway through this right now and I am absolutely loving it. So I would describe Penance as a mixed media psychological thriller. It uses one of my favourite ever conceits in fiction, which is that it is a book inside a book that knows it's a book. So Penance has been published as if it is a real true crime book about the murder of a teenager in a seaside town by other girls from her school. And it follows the format of many real true crime books where the author introduces themselves and says how they found the case and then says how they went about investigating the case. But in the world of Penance, this book is a reprint of the original book with added endnotes and some more information, because the original book was actually pulled by its publishers when the author was embroiled in a massive court case over some of the details that they included in this book. And really, there have been times reading this where I have actually forgotten that it is fiction. Like, I've been so carried along by the way that Eliza Clark has put this together that it really feels a little bit too real, a little bit too close to home. It's kind of a masterpiece, and I think you guys should get ready to hear me talking about it a lot over the next little while. And speaking of other books that I am absolutely loving and have carried over from last month, I am currently more than halfway through Morning Star, which is the 3rd book in the Red Rising trilogy. It's the first 3 books of a 7-book planned series, and I hate Pierce Brown. Boy, you guys are really coming along in the journey of this series with me. But I think it is safe to say that I am obsessed with this series, that it's entirely possible that this series as it stands, depending on what Pierce Brown does in the next sort of 50 pages of this book, depending on that, this series is actually heading towards being one of my favourite series of all time. It is just so good. So in case you have somehow missed me raving about this series, this is a sci-fi series which is set many hundreds of years in our future. In this world we meet Darrow. He is a miner beneath the surface of Mars, and he and his people have been miners for as long as they can remember in their history. They are mining for a precious substance called helium-3, and that is the only substance they are told that can possibly save humanity, because it is the only substance that can be used to terraform the surface of Mars and to move all of the people from a dying Earth over. They know that they will live and die beneath the surface of Mars for the cause, but they're mostly okay with that. And then one day, after a horrible incident, Darrow is actually taken to the surface of the planet and is shown that Mars has been terraformed for hundreds of years, and that actually he and his people are all slaves. And he, with some help, decides to infiltrate the system that has kept his people below the surface for all these years and break it from within. This is one of those series where you should not, under any circumstances, get comfortable loving a character, because there is a good chance that they ain't gonna die. And it's probably not gonna be like a nice gentle passing either. It's probably gonna be horrific. There are so many sides that are switched in this trilogy. There are so many betrayals that are betrayed. There are so many people who you think are one thing and then they are aggressively something very different. And I don't know why I am doing this to myself, except to say that apparently in hurting myself like this, I am having a great time. So yeah, I'm gonna be finishing Morningstar in the next couple of days, and then I'm going to be heading on to Iron Gold. So again, Red Rising is the original trilogy, and then Iron Gold follows on from that, I think like a number of years later. Iron Gold is the start of a quartet of books which will finish out the series, 3 of which have already been published, and 1 of which I'm probably going to have to wait a really long time for, whilst hating myself for the timing of picking this one up. Good job, Leanne. Now the next book that I am going to pick up is a book that I am already slightly salty about. And while that is not the book or the author's fault, it is aggressively the publisher's fault. Are we surprised? I am still, nevertheless, a little bit miffed. The book that I am talking about is The Hood by Lavi Tidhar. And it is, as I'm sure you will have guessed by now, a Robin Hood retelling with like revised historical and fantasy elements. I picked this up on a Waterstones excursion with the lovely Amy the last time that she was down visiting me, and in fact we both picked it up and we are planning to buddy read it this month. More on that square later. And my guys, when I tell you that there was nothing to indicate on this book that it was part of a series, I really mean that. Like, I check these days. I have been burned by this in the past. But in preparing for this video, I looked this book up on Goodreads, and it turns out that it is in fact the second book in a quartet. So this series is called the Antimatter of Britain Quartet, and the first book is By Force Alone, and it is an Arthurian retelling with the Romans thrown in there. And from what I can see from the reviews and the synopsis for this, it looks like what Lavi Tidhar is planning on doing is doing like a quartet of books through history, retelling some big stories from Britain, but giving them like a massive twist. And apparently both books kind of fall on the almost grim dark side of the fantasy genre. Well, go and soak up the sun then. I mean, you're on your own, but it's all yours. So yes, in all of my research, there is nothing that suggests that anything links these two books other than them both being in that series of retellings. So I am going to go ahead and I am going to read this one as a standalone. And if I like it, I do think that I will pick up the first book in the series, because there's something about noir Arthurian knights that's just like tingling something at the back of my brain. Probably a holdover from being such a crime reader in my past. Next up for this category, I have a book that I have taken off of my Dark Academia TBR for the BER months that I posted recently. If you missed that video, you can watch it up here, but essentially it is a video in which I introduce to you all of the Dark Academia books that I have been stockpiling for the coming BER months, with the obvious exception of October, which is in this house a haunted house only month. Well, I say only, but I actually mean predominantly, because I'm definitely still going to be reading the Red Rising series during those months. So yeah, there will be haunted houses and haunted emotions from me as Pierce Brown kills more people off. Anyway, the first book that I have picked off of that TBR to tackle is I Have Some Questions for You by Rebecca Mackay. This one is one of those Dark Academias that has one foot in thriller also. It is the setting of this one which makes it a Dark Academia, because it is set on a university campus, and also the dual timelines from past and present that deal with the same murder, because Dark Academia is typically characterised by there being a murder that we pretty much know about from the beginning and are slowly being led towards. So I Have Some Questions for You is about Bodhi Kane. She is a successful podcaster, yet another podcaster. This seems to be a theme with my reading right now, because Penance is very podcast heavy, and so is None of This Is True by Lisa Jo, which I've also just read and loved. So I'm hoping that this one makes it 3 for 3. Yes, Bodhi Kane is a podcaster and a film professor, and when she was in university her best friend was killed. But although the school athletics coach was actually convicted for that murder, Bodhi was never entirely sure that that was true. For Bodhi, there were just some things that didn't add up, but she has tried her very best to distance herself from that. Now, all these years later, however, her old university extends to her an invitation to come and teach a film criticism course, and the speed with which she accepts this invitation makes her realise that in fact she has been waiting for a reason to go back to university for years, and now that she is back, she's going to start investigating Talia's murder properly. I am so excited for this book, I cannot tell you. Although the actual concept of Rebecca Mackay's last book didn't work for me, the writing was absolutely amazing. So I'm hoping that the writing hangs around in this one and that the subject is much more to my liking. And then finally for this square, I have This Family by Kate Sawyer. Now, this is an odd pick for me, I will admit. It is contemporary literary fiction, which is a place that I do not usually find myself. But I picked this book up in a tiny bookshop when I was on holiday earlier this year because I have previously tried The Stranding by Kate Sawyer, and the subject of that book freaked me out so much. I was so incredibly triggered by the subject that I couldn't keep reading. But just like Rebecca Mackay, I loved Kate Sawyer's characters and I absolutely loved her writing, and I was desperate to try something else by her, but at the time that was her only book. So when I recognised her name, I rushed over and picked this up immediately, and it turns out that the premise is actually very up my alley. I don't read a lot of contemporary, but when I do, what I want is complicated familial relationships. And in this book, all of Mary's family have had to come home to their little hometown, to the little house that they were all brought up in for her wedding. I say little house, it's not actually that little, it seems like it might be part of a country estate. But nevertheless, this family has incredibly complicated relationships. There are siblings that don't speak, there are 40-year-old secrets, there is a history here. And this book tells the history of that family through their interactions on just one day of Mary's wedding. And everything about that concept speaks to me. I want to know what these people have done to each other. I want those complicated loves. I want those traumatic parental relationships. Give me all of this and give me it now. Alright, let's move on to the buddy read square because I have just brought it up. For anybody who is new here, the intention of this square was for myself and my lovely friend Amy to indulge in our backlists, to excavate our Kindles and the dusty things that have been on our shelves for quite a long time. And although it is 12 buddy reads, it wasn't initially meant to be one buddy read a month, it was just meant to be 12 buddy reads over the course of the year. But things haven't quite worked out that way, and both of our brains went, no, this will be a monthly challenge. And so in August, I was devastated to report to you that we were only on 5 buddy reads for the year, which was not where we needed to be for August. But now, as of this video, I am delighted to let you know that we are now 7 buddy reads in for the year. So we're only technically 1 book behind, not counting September's book. And this, I think, is a lot more achievable. However, the other thing that has happened since this square was created is that Amy and I have both done massive unhauls of our leftover backlist of books. And so after this unhaul, what has happened is we have started to buddy read more new purchases. So last month we buddy read Yellowface and we buddy read None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. And this month we have Lofty Intentions, for we have both already started our long forgotten buddy read of Certain Dark Things. Certain Dark Things by Sylvia Marina Garcia was on a TBR maybe like 3 months ago, and we just kept not getting to it. But we finally picked it up, I think actually on the 1st of September. The next book that we will be buddy reading, I have already mentioned, it's going to be The Hood. And I can tell you right now that Amy's as annoyed as I am that this is the 2nd book in a series. But hey ho, enough bitterness on that front, and on to the last book that we will be buddy reading this month, and that is Wolfsong by TJ Klune. Wolfsong is the first book in the Green Creek Saga series, which is a republished series of TJ Klune's older books which have been beautifully rejacketed. In Wolfsong we meet Ox Matheson as he is abandoned by the last surviving member of his family, and he finds himself utterly alone in the world. And as Ox is trying to struggle through and find a way to survive, next door a new family moves in. The Bennets are one of those big raucous families that he can't help but staring at and wondering how they are like functional humans. And then one of the sons from the Bennett family decides to befriend Ox, whether he likes it or not, and Ox is drawn into their family circle, wherein he finds out that actually they're not just a normal family, they are in fact werewolves, and with werewolves comes pack drama and a lot of death. So this is the first book in a quartet, the second book of which has just been republished, and we're due to get one more before the end of the year and then the last one early next year, I think. So I'm hoping that as these are republished, Amy and I can just continue reading through the series together, because that would be really great for one of the other squares on this bingo board. Next up, I am going to update you on my Read 12 audiobook square, and I say update because all of the books that I am going to be listening to for this month are books that I have already mentioned. Like I said, I've got the majority of this month's books also on audiobook so that I can read them while I'm away, while I'm driving and crafting and looking at pretty Scottish things. But there is one book in this section that I have not yet mentioned. And I'm so pleased to say that this square has done exactly what I hoped that it would do, and it has forced me to get back into the routine of listening to an audiobook when I've got 5 minutes to do something, if I'm washing dishes, if I'm folding clothes. You know, in all of those moments where I may otherwise have chosen to like watch crap on my phone or to listen to Spotify, I am instead picking up my audiobook, which means that I'm getting through them very much more quickly. And honestly, that was what made August the successful reading month that it was. So now at the start of September, my total of read audiobooks for the year is sitting at So the only book that is in the audiobook category that I haven't already mentioned is In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead, and once again this is another book from my Dark Academia TBR, and it is the other book on that list which kind of also has one foot in thriller, and on the surface sounds very much like I Have Questions for You, because it also deals with a murder at a university campus at the time, and also with those people now many years after the event. The last time Jessica was at this college, she didn't look like this. She was a broken figure of a person who everybody whispered about and talked about behind her back, because she had a very close-knit friend group at the time, and one of those friends was murdered, and every other person in that friend group was questioned over this murder. It absolutely tore them apart, it tore their campus apart, and Jessica has spent her entire life trying to not be that person anymore. But when she comes back for this reunion and she is reunited with these friends, they very quickly discover that somebody is not over this murder, that somebody here in this room wants answers, and that they are going to get it under any circumstances. Like I said, this one also has a dual timeline, so we are back with Jessica at the time that this murder happened, and also with her in the present day at this reunion. And the idea that the past timeline is over a lot of time but the present timeline is all taking place in one night is just, it's sending me. I am so freaking excited. So yeah, I'm going to be racing through this audiobook at some point this month. The next square that I have to update you on is my non-fiction square. Now, this is the square that has 2 stars in it. It's the square that I have completed twice, and so therefore it is also the square that allowed me to take 5% off of my Read 80% of my new purchases in 2023 square. That sentence was like running a marathon. But interestingly enough, after like speeding through this square repeatedly, I am now making very slow progress in it, because I only have one book to add to it for August. I hadn't realised that I had only picked up one non-fiction in August. It's clearly not very like me right now. I'm clearly in a very non-fiction space, so I don't really know how that happened. And I think it's actually going to repeat itself for September, because I'm only putting one non-fiction book on this TBR, mainly on account of the fact that I don't actually have many unread audiobooks that are non-fiction at this point, so it would be much more difficult to get through any non-fiction in September while I'm away. So the book that I've decided to pick up is Red Memory by Tanya Brannigan. Now, I've done this very cleverly because it will also count for that 75% of new purchases read, and this one is about the Cultural Revolution in China. Tanya Brannigan is a journalist who went to China to cover a bunch of different local things, and when she got there and tried to interview people about the Cultural Revolution Nobody wanted to talk. It was like the entire thing had been erased in the national consciousness. She then set her mind to finding anybody who would potentially talk to her about their part in the Cultural Revolution. So I am under absolutely no illusions that this one is going to be a harrowing read, but it's also an area of history that I don't know very much about, so I am very excited to learn things. Now, moving on to my series tracker square. This is a new square on the bingo board that replaced another one that was just defunct. It just wasn't doing anything, I wasn't using it. And it was created for the sole purpose of forcing me to pick up books that I had mentioned on my series tracker video, where I had finally made a complete list of all the series that I was in the middle of and either decided to keep going with them or DNF them. This square is here to force me to make progress on that goal, and I am delighted to say that from a brand new square we now have 5 in this square. 5 books that I have read from my series tracker TBR. And this month I'm hoping to continue to do the thing, because obviously Red Rising and the starting of that series, added that series to my series tracker TBR, is something that I was actively pursuing. So any books that I read from that series this month will also go in this square. Wolfsong will also be adding another series to that tracker, so I will then be making progress on that. And I have another couple of books that I have written down here that I'm just not going to talk about in my TBR. Because what I'm finding with my series tracker is that I'm enjoying looking at a series and going, right, I can pick that off this month, and none of the series that I've chosen for this month are series that I'm absolutely and positively sure that I'll be able to complete off. So I'm just not going to commit to any of them, except to say that a couple of them are from favourite series. I had so much fun in August reading the whole Lock and Key series in one go. I'm just going to try and keep the momentum up and not like overcommit myself, because as soon as it becomes a massive task in my head, the ADHD just goes, not today. There is in fact a chronic lack of dopamine for this task. We shall be choosing not to. And I would like to choose to instead. Which brings me to updating the next 2 squares actually. First up, the Finish 3 ongoing series square, and also the Read 10 graphic novels square. So we're now on to the second round of my graphic novel square, which is a thing that I did not think that I was going to say in this video. And we have finished 2 entire series. Just one more to go for a star in this box. I am pumped. Now granted, these were graphic novel series, so they were somewhat of an easy win from my series tracker spreadsheet. I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing. I think that's a good way to get the ball rolling. It's a good way to keep me enthusiastic about it. I did a stock take of the graphic novels that I currently have on my shelves that are unread after this, and the next big series that I need to tackle is indeed like a huge series that I haven't read several of the last volumes of, but I'm going to have to read the first volumes of in order to actually understand what's going on, because it's very complicated. But there are 2 graphic novels making their way into my house right now, because Emily Carroll is in Through the Woods Emily Carroll, which is a graphic novel that massively triggered me, but I really enjoyed the experience, has brought out another graphic novel that I did not know about until I walked into a bookshop and saw a poster for it on the wall but no copies of it. So I have ordered it, and that one is coming in soon. And also before the end of the year we will have another bind up of Lore Olympus, so we will definitely be continuing on in this square. I think if we continue with Morning Glories, I will definitely get this square finished more than once again. So hopefully we can hit it a few times and get more % off of my goal. And then finally I've got an odd book. A book that doesn't really go anywhere on my bingo board, but was a specific request from the lovely Beth. Beth from Fairy Tale Reads wanted to know whether I had read Ordinary Monsters yet, because if I liked it, she was probably going to like it. But I haven't, because Ordinary Monsters is a massive chunker. It's a huge chunker, and as such it is just sat languishing on my horror shelves, waiting for the day where I decide I want to tackle it. So to be perfectly honest, Beth handed me a fantastic excuse, because when was I going to pick this one up otherwise? So Ordinary Monsters is set in England in the late 1880s, and it is essentially described as kind of like a horror take on X-Men. We are following 2 detectives who are tasked with taking 2 extraordinary children from this world who have powers kind of like the X-Men do, to a school in Scotland. In that school they will be safe, they will be taught to use their powers safely and possibly for the good of some kind of cause or other. And so it's a race against time to get these children to the institute. But at the same time, we are also apparently finding out some shady secrets about the institute itself, and so this place may not actually be the safe place that these detectives thought that it was going to be. Now originally when I picked this one up, I thought that it was just going to be a standalone, but I discovered from Goodreads that it is in fact not a standalone. And the second book, which doesn't have a cover yet but is called Bringer of Dust, is coming in early 2024. So now is actually a perfect time to pick this up, because if I do in fact absolutely love this, I will want the sequel in hardback, and it's a good time to know whether I should pre-order it or not. So thanks, Beth, I think. And last but not least, we have my book club books. Now, for the first time since we started Around the Disc, I have actually fallen behind. As of now, I am, well, I guess technically 3 books behind. I haven't read one of the books that we were meant to read for August, and now there are another 2 books in September, and this was the one thing that I was really afraid of when I started Around the Disc in 800 Days with the lovely Kirsty. If you haven't heard of this, it is a Discworld complete read-along that we are running. It's going to be running for 2 years. Around about 800 days. And we are reading for this 2 books a month because there are so many books in this series. But the books do start to get progressively chunkier as we get through. I don't think there's any of them that are over like 480 pages, but nevertheless, like 2 of them together is a big chunk. And I was scared. I was scared going into this that I was not going to be able to keep up, but so far I have managed it, and I am very, very proud of myself. But I am also determined that I am not going to let myself slip now and fall behind, because if I get really far behind, then I don't think I would ever be able to catch up. So this month I need to read Soul Music, I think, is the one that's left over from August, and I also need to read Interesting Times, which is not great because Interesting Times is not interesting to me. It's not one of my favourites. And I also get to read Masquerade. So Masquerade is going to be the sweetie incentive at the end of reading these 2, because I absolutely love Masquerade. It is one of my favourite books. It's one of the Witches books, but it's also a crossover book. The Witches meet the guards and like a bunch of other things goes on in that book. So I'm very excited to pick it up, and I'm determined, especially because Kirsty is here this month, to actually catch up. And then another one that I am behind in, I am behind on my Patreon book club, the Seance Society. We are a bi-monthly variety book club. We pick 2 books each time in the hopes that the 2 that end up top of the poll are different genres. So if you are not into fantasy and the other one is a thriller, you can read that one, and vice versa. Most people read both. I certainly read both every time, except for this time. I have not read On the Nature of Magic by Marion Womack, which was our second pick, and I'm pretty annoyed about it because I was excited for it. But that being said, it is a sort of like ghostly paranormal book, so it will very nicely fit into the BER months. However, we are in the voting process for our next 2 books, so there will be another 2 books that I am adding to this TBR. I just don't know what they are yet. When I know, I'll tell you. So that is it, guys. That is everything for my September TBR. If you have got this far through the video, then leave me the little running person emoji, because I feel like I'm running to catch myself when it comes to my book clubs, but I'm also determined that I'm going to race through this TBR just like August. Like, we really want to make it another fabulous reading month. Please tell me down below what you are picking up for your September TBR, and if you have read any of the books that I am going to be picking up and whether you like them or not. I would like your opinions down below. Also, I need to remind you that our trip to the wonderful southern Spain is now live. If you would like to come travelling with me in 2024, we are going to be going to the sets from Game of Thrones. We're going to have an in-person book club. We're going to have some absolutely stunning tours wonders of old architecture. Going to the Alhambra, guys. If any of that sounds appealing to you, then check out the link down below. There are still 4 early bird slots available for our trip, so you still got a chance to catch those discounted prices. And finally, I would like to thank my patrons on the Loch tier for making this video possible. A big thanks to Samantha H, Samantha D, Cinderella and Silky. And if you would like to join us in the slightly haunted Scottish town of Loch Fern, then check out my Patreon down below. If you're new here and you want to know how this TBR works out for me, then hit that subscribe button, and if you have enjoyed this video, then please hit that thumbs up because it really does help my channel. And I will speak to you soon, guys. Bye!